Hi everyone, welcome to our weekly webinar at Qdabra Software. My name is Hillary Stupa, I'm a developer here. And today we are going to talk about a few new PowerApps and Flow features. And at the end, hopefully we'll be able to have Jimmy show us something new on FormsViewer. So without any further ado, let me make sure I'm recording and make sure I'm screen sharing, and I'll go ahead and get started. First off, if you have not yet tried FormsViewer, I recommend you do. You can extend the life of your InfoPath forms using FormsViewer instead of InfoPath form services. You get built-in queue rules support. Publishing is fantastic. You just drag and drop to publish super fast, a lot less annoying than watching InfoPath kind of churn and struggle as it publishes. So at any rate, if you're interested in FormsViewer, you haven't had a chance to try it yet, just let us know. You know how to find us, and we'd be happy to show you more about it. Okay. Moving on, Power Apps. I'm really kind of enmeshed in Power Apps and Flow right now. Some of you might have heard or seen we're doing a training next week. Training is the 10th through the 13th, 9 a.m. to noon. I've got so many labs, so much material to share. So if you've got the time next week and you've got the budget, I do still have some training slots open. You can just go hit the Qdabra website and get registered. So I'd love to see a few more people in that class. We're going to have, I think, a really good, busy class. At any rate, so one interesting thing with working with Power Apps has been, I don't know how many of you have used it for much, but they are constantly updating it. And that's great and that's fun until the screenshots in the lab you wrote this morning are outdated this afternoon because they changed the UI. So that's been kind of a little bit of a hair puller for me. One cool new feature they have added recently that I want to show you is a rule builder. You add a rule to your control or your label, your icon, whatever. You add conditions, one or more. You can add multiple rules, or you can have complex conditions. And then right there on the canvas, you set your design changes. And you can see in real time what things are going to look like when it runs right there into the designer. And what I want to do, rather than like kind of bounce around and show you and talk about these things and then show you afterwards. I just want to go ahead and show you this now. So I've got a little demo. A little demo form here that I built off of a SharePoint list. And you can see right here, I've got, let me jack this up a little, just want to make sure everybody can see it. You can see right here, I've got a little status, right? There's pending, there's active, there's closed. So let's just say that I want a slightly different format for things that are different statuses, that when somebody gets to the details screen for this, I'd like to use some kind of maybe color highlighting to let them know what's important. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this one. Now, if you guys weren't aware of this, this is another, I'm sorry, I'm such a fangirl. This is another one of my favorite Power Apps features. You don't have to run the app to run the app's actions. There's a few caveats there, but in general, like once you see how I'm hovering over this and I get my little hand icon that tells me this is clickable, I don't have to run the app to click this button and see a result. I can actually just go ahead and click the button and see the result. And that button has a navigate function that takes me to this screen. And I'm going to go ahead and just make this a little smaller again. And I've already got some rules in place here. So if I hit this rules pane, you can see I've got a rule in place there, and I'm just going to delete it. One thing that I'm not in love with on the rule builder, you guys have heard me complain in InfoPath when everything doesn't have a meaningful name. They don't give you any way to name this bad boy. You are just stuck here with rule 5, but that's all right. So what I want is on this status field, I'm going to go ahead and set some things. I'm actually going to close this because right now this is on the details screen, and what I want it on is I want it on this active field. So I'm going to go ahead and just set a rule that says basically if this is equal to pending. Okay, so This says data card value 2. It doesn't always get things right when you just use the simple condition builder, but that's okay. We'll just hit dot text here. You've got to kind of get used to what you need to enter. So the rule builder is still, you see the little, I'm pointing at it. Doesn't that help with my finger? You see the little experimental over next to rules here. That's kind of lets you know that things may be in flux here. So we're just going to say if this equals pending, then we're going to do some stuff. Okay, so now I've set my condition. You can see right here that my condition doesn't equal what the current status is. There's a reason I'm doing it like this. You guys just have to trust me. I know sometimes you think I'm a mad woman. And so I'm going to click define actions. This is the fun part, okay? So we get a pop-up. It's very folksy. Let's go. It says you are defining what will happen when the conditions of the rule are applied. So I've got this big yellow bar here letting me know that everything I do in this screen right now is what's going to happen when the rule's applied. So I'm going to do some really fancy stuff here, like set the fill here to green, and I'm going to make this guy have a fill of orange. I like things pretty. I'm going to change this guy's text color to purple. You get the gist here. I don't think I have to do too much more here. You know, I'll increase the border thickness around this data card. Well, that didn't do me any good, did it? We'll do border thickness here. Oh, border thickness is apparently not being respected, but that's all right. So I've got some stuff here that I've changed, and I've made some distinct differences. Now you can see this is what this is going to look like in the case where the status is equal to pending, okay? But this card, the status is not equal to pending. So when I click done, you can see right away my format goes back to normal, and we've got my rule. Here's my condition. Here's what happens, right? And it lets me know that these are all of the things that have changed. I can delete individual things. I can click define actions and click let's go. And I can add more things. You can see my rule is immediately applied there when I go ahead and click that I want to define more actions. And when I click done, I've got rule 6 here. You know, and if I click the drop down, I can see the condition. I can see what are the things that will happen when that condition applies. And I've got the trash can to pitch it if I want. So now I've got this rule set. When I'm here on this screen where the condition is not met, my status is active, then none of these things happen. If I go back to my browse gallery and I click somebody that's pending, then you can see my extraordinarily attractive design is applied. So that is how this new rule builder works. It's pretty cool in that it gives you the opportunity to see these things being applied when they're applied. And you don't have to use it for just colors, okay? You can also use it for things like disabling stuff, right? So if we wanted to, we could add things to disable a button, for example. Let me just go ahead and see if I can get to this guy again. Where did it go on my data card? Now I can't find my rule, people. At any rate, how do I edit it? There it is. Okay, you can see this is new. So if I wanted to say, look, this shouldn't show, right? I could set visible to false here, for example. We'll just do that too, so you can kind of see this. So if I wanted to disable a bunch of controls under certain circumstances, the rule builder would be a great way to go. So here I am. Now you can see this is horrible and ugly, and the trash can is missing. It doesn't make any sense that I did that for pending, but in active it shows up. So like you could go ahead and set a number of rules over which controls you want to be able to see or not see. If you wanted to disable controls, you could do that as well. So all of these various control properties are available to you in the rule builder, and you can just add to these. If you needed to add to your condition, if you wanted to say if it's pending or if it's equal to something else, you could do that. All of these things are available to you in the rule builder. Okay, so that's that cool new feature. Let me get back to my slideshow. And it was confusing to me at first. When I first tried it and I added the condition and I got the yellow bar, I was like, what does this even mean? How do I add actions? But now you know. The other thing they changed recently was the data pane. So it used to be that the data pane was available exactly where that rules button is now. Okay, so over in that right-hand pane that we were just looking at, where this rules button is now is where the data pane used to be. And instead, if you need to get to the data pane, first off, if you want to look at overall data sources, go from the view menu. Okay, so view data sources, that gets you the data pane open with your data sources, like if you need to refresh or if you need to add or if you need to delete. If you're working with a control like a detail form or a gallery, all of that data information and the configuration stuff is now over here in this data pane. If the data pane does not open for you, when you go and click on something, like if you've got the data pane closed and you go click on your browse gallery, where is the data? It's right here. Okay, so you can just click there. You could also have clicked layout, and this is where you can change things like your layout for your gallery and what you want showing in your body, subtitle, and title, and all of those things. So that is the new data pane. Basically, what they said in the release on this was it was to give you more real estate or to help it be, I think, a little more intuitive when you're trying to configure complex controls. So like if you add a gallery, if you my dog is over here, he's like snorting at me. It's very wonderful. I hope you can't hear it. So if you add a gallery or if you add a new form or something like that, they were trying to make it a little easier for you to find everything that you need. Okay, and that was why it was added. Again, though, my issue was I initially had a little problem finding my data sources again when I needed them. I'd gotten accustomed to things being over here underneath data. So just kind of a heads up, that's where you find it. One thing I've become very convinced of in PowerApps and Flow both is my control freak tendencies are not doing me any favors here. I really just kind of have to relax and be like, oh, cool, look what changed overnight. Let's go find the stuff we need. So you need to approach these apps with a sense of adventure. You need to approach this with kind of a sense of wonderment and curiosity, I think, because it's certainly, they do a lot of little updates and there's not always a lot of heads up. Okay. So back to the slides, that's where you can find data stuff. Moving on to Flow. So this is a super cool new feature. I know some of you guys have been at my previous webinars where I've done a little bit in Flow, and I know at least once I was like, okay, so over here online is the reference to the formula syntax. And so this is where you go look and figure out if you can do something. This is better, y'all, having this stuff built in. It's a lot easier, I think, for all of us. So now when we go to a flow, if we wanted to use a function, we can go ahead and we can add that here in the expression builder. In this flow that I've got built for my class next week, I'm using an add days function. So if you needed to add something, you can go to expression, and then you can go find what you need. And at first I looked at string functions and I'm just like, what do you mean just concat? What's wrong with you people? And then I noticed the see more, see less button, right? And I don't know why it's not alphabetical, I guess because they didn't ask me about it, but that's okay. You can just kind of scroll down and see what you can see. But do be sure to click on that see more if you're looking for something and not finding it, okay? Because they have quite a bit there. And when you add something, you get Intellisense. You should get Intellisense. I was getting Intellisense yesterday, where it was popping up a little box telling you what kinds of things you can. Oh, look at that. The Intellisense, okay, let me tell you something else. What I was getting 2 days ago was a pop-up explaining the formula syntax. I'm not seeing that today, but as you can see, I am seeing like true Intellisense here where you start typing and it starts popping something else up in there. So that's also very nifty. Let's try now. Yep, look at that. So this is pretty nice. And this is new too. So at any rate, you can enter your formulas. You can click over to dynamic content if you had something that you wanted to add that was coming from a previous action in your flow. And it's extraordinarily handy. I guess they've given us, whoops, let me click that again. I guess they've given us enough information here that they don't actually have to add, more information about how the formula works, because this does have quite a bit of information right there already. At any rate, I encourage you to check that out. It certainly makes it a lot easier to build these kinds of functions. Don't forget there's an update or an OK button if you actually want to add your new expression to the thing. Before I show you my other slide on Flow, I wanted to also show you this, which is new, this little download CSV link. So if you wanted to download CSV information about all of your runs, you can do that now from here. So when you're at the dashboard and you take a look at your dashboard and you're like, okay, so here's my history of runs. And I hope I've got this guy turned off. I do, good. I don't really need any more reminders for non-existing expense reports. You can go to see all and you can download the CSV. Okay, so that's pretty cool information to have as well. Finally, what was my last thing on Flow? Finally, they've made some changes to the recurrence trigger. So the place where I saw the most changes that pleased me the most were under day and week, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. We didn't used to have the same kinds of configuration options for recurrence. Like I can recall one of the first flows I built, and it seems so long ago, right? For recurrence, I needed this to run every Monday night at around 10 p.m. And so I had to set the start time to make sure that after I had finished the flow and tested it, that the next start was Monday at 10 p.m. So you just kind of set your start date time and then you set it to run every 7 days. And it was like, okay, well, that should get me where I need to go. However, now they've got a much better recurrence trigger, and I've got one here. And so right now it says this runs at 23:59 every day. You hit edit. So here's your intervals. You've got, however many intervals, however many, day, week, month, hour, etc. You can set a time zone. You can set a start time if you want. You've got the option of selecting which hours you want it to start at, which minutes you want it to start at. You want to keep in mind the amount of time it takes your flow to run approximately. Obviously, you don't want to run it every minute if it takes 5 minutes to run. You guys knew that already. I'm telling you something really obvious. And then weekly is great. I loved this when I saw a week, and I could say, look, I want it to run, once. I don't understand this. If I want it to run 3 times, do I have to put an interval of 3 and then select Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? I'm not sure. I haven't tried. I'd be curious to know if I selected like Monday and Friday and left the interval at 1, what would happen, right? But I haven't tested that, so I apologize. I probably should have tested that before I came to show you this. But I do really like the fact that you can select days now, and you can be very specific there. I think that's extremely handy. So let's see. That was pretty much what I had on Flow and PowerApps. Do you guys have any questions on either of these? Either of these things, any of the new features? If you do, just go ahead and type them into the question box. Otherwise, Jimmy, did you want me to make you presenter? Do you have a little something to share on FormsViewer?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me find you. It's always, you guys, really exciting to have me operating the console in GoToMeeting, because I am like a goldfish and it is brand new to me every single time. So here we go. I think I'm doing this right.
There we go. Okay. So just a bit of a FormsViewer announcement for those of you who are using FormsViewer. As some of you may have noticed, SharePoint is, Microsoft is making a lot of changes to SharePoint. There's this, what they call the modern view, or the new experience in SharePoint, that's a little snazzier than what we've been used to up to this point. And also there's this new thing called group sites, which are sort of, they're basically SharePoint sites, but they're associated with a certain group of people. So what's happened is that SharePoint has been making these changes and also sort of stripping out functionality that's been there up till now. a lot of the customization features and things we used to use to run scripts will no longer work in these modern views or in the group sites. Even if you're running the group site in classic mode, so-called classic mode, you won't be able to run certain customization features that were available up until now. So what that means for people using FormsViewer is that this JS link feature that we've been using up until now to get to sort of override library views and get the links to open up documents in FormsViewer and get the documents open in FormsViewer, that JS link approach is no longer going to work. There's an all-new customization framework for these new this modern experience. So over the past week, I've been looking into what it takes to get this customization going, and it's still very raw at the moment. This is a brand new stuff. Most of the documentation has been coming out within the last 2 weeks or so, so it's extremely new. But we've made some progress figuring this stuff out. And what we can see here is that we've got this modern view, and I was able to add a button here called New Form. It doesn't have an icon just yet. We're going to work on that. But you can see that when I click the New Form button here, just like you're all used to, it opens up the form in FormsViewer. We can also see that the document links here, the file names, I can click on any one of these files and open up the file in FormsViewer. And there we go. So we've been making some good headway on that. There's still more to go there, but we're figuring it out. We're getting it working. So our plan for now is what you just saw in that demo just now is actually two features. There's a field customizer, which sort of rewrites the field values, the name column to open documents in FormsViewer, and then there's what called a library command, which provides that button to open the form. And then in order to manage these settings and sort of install these features on libraries, we're going to put together a graphical interface, a web part, to allow managing that stuff. So the good news for those of you who have been frustrated editing those JavaScript files and uploading them to SharePoint and figuring out the URLs to reference them, that's all going to go away, and we're going to have a nice interface for managing that stuff. So we look forward to getting it working and having those of you, your FormsViewer users out there, to try it out. And that's it.
That's
Back to you, Haley.
fantastic, Jimmy. Thank you so much for showing us that. Yeah, so that's it, you guys. I realized for me, at least, this was uncharacteristically short. You guys are used to me taking up your full hour and then all of your free time after that. Looks like we do have a question. Jimmy, maybe you'd have an idea on this. Michael asks if there's any idea when they will convert all pages, lists, and libraries to the new modern look. Right now, he has a mix in his environment. Have you seen anything on that in your research?
No, I don't think there's any clear announcement on that right now. I think they're still working out all the details of this stuff. Things are still broken on the Microsoft end. So I think the classic view is going to be around for a while longer. In the meantime, while this stuff is still sort of in flux, we do recommend that you continue to use the classic view as long as you can.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, sounds like we all are going to continue to have a good time with occasional surprises, right? Isn't it fun? So I actually, last week was the second time they changed the UI on PowerApps since I started writing labs. So it was the second time I started going through to fix UI problems and screenshots. And I just reacted with, laughing hysterically by the second time. I was just like, whatever. My first slide for training is, hey, by the way, you're going to have to roll with this. So, okay, what about JS Link? Is there a recommendation to replace this? Was the other question. Do you have an idea on that, Jimmy?
So basically, the replacement for JS Link is called SharePoint Framework. It's a whole new platform or mechanism for writing extensions. So we're figuring out how to replace JSLink as far as our JSLink files go. But if you're using it for some other purpose, I recommend looking into what's called SharePoint Framework.
Thanks so much. Any other questions before we call it a day? There is a survey that's going to pop up at the end of the webinar. I'd appreciate it if you'd fill it out. I don't really have anything to offer in terms of webinar files this time, just the presentation. But you know, it does help us kind of have a sense of what you're interested in. And we appreciate you filling that out. So I'm so glad everybody could attend. If you're not attending PowerApps training next week, keep an eye out. I'm sure we're going to offer another class in the future. And I hope everybody has a fantastic week. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.